Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel, and once again we're doing a storyteller advice type video. So if you're a big fan of Blood on the Clocktower, you've probably played a few games, you've probably started running games of your own, and then, you know, what's bridging the gap between starting to learning storytelling and becoming very comfortable with storytelling? I've been doing it for a very, very long time. We do a lot of gameplay and stuff here on the channel, but I also like to come through and talk about what storytelling is like, what kind of skills I feel like I've learned, and try and communicate that to you. Now, this one is going to be a tough video. Kind of like the last one that I recorded, I talked about what happens when a player gets upset and leaves, because it can happen, and you, as a storyteller, need to be able to deal with that, but it's not really taught to you anyway how to handle this situation. And I want to talk about another similar one where it's like, what do you do when you've made a mistake? But like a way more simple mistake. What do you do when you've messed up someone's information somewhere? Now, depending on how seriously your group plays, and I find that groups that I tend to end up playing with trend towards way more serious. Being very serious about parts of the game that are not designed or intended to be very serious. Some things like, oh, exactly when in the night order does this thing happen, because that might interact with this other thing, or one that keeps coming up for our particular playgroup is the difference between the spy and the widow. They both show up at the same time, but the spy used to be very, very low on the night order sheet and is now higher on the night order sheet. And the spy should see all of the reminder tokens, and the widow should not see any of the reminder tokens, because the widow's ability has the opportunity to change where those things would go. The widow should not know what the result would be. Like, you're not going to know who you were going to show with the washwoman, and they go, well, I'm going to stop that. They should just know they're poisoning the washwoman, and they're going to get a bad read. And so really niche things that really only storytelling matters, to try and read into how the storyteller runs a game, to try and solve things. And that's part of what inspired me to kind of run through this here, because when you make a mistake as a storyteller, players are going to read into that and try and use that to get extra information out of you, which means that when you've accidentally given information that's incorrect, they're going to try and figure out what the actual thing was that you meant to do, or what kind of mistake you made about it if it is incorrect. And that is why we have our boy the Vortox here up on the screen. If you've accidentally given true information, and then you've gone, oh no, wait, hang on, that one's incorrect, let me give you a new one, they're going to go, oh, you just remembered that there's a Vortox in play, and that now you've had to correct that information. Or something like that. Players reading into what the storyteller does is only ever works out negatively in my experience, but people still do it, and there is kind of a few different ways that you can mitigate this kind of a thing. The main thing that you should do is announce that you've made a mistake. Now, if someone comes to you and asks for information, and you give it to them, and then immediately go, oops, that was wrong, here's what the real thing is, they have the opportunity to read into you and how you've delivered that to potentially do stuff. If you just commit to it, you go, okay, yep, this is the information you've got, cool, go away. And then later, when everyone is present, you go, look, I've made a mistake, I'm going to take actions to rectify this. This might mean, in another scenario where, because most of the things where they happen is like, something has impacted what the good player's information would be to be more negative. Instead, next time you're given the opportunity to give a player good information, you make it good, right? Like, you know, the more gracious or beneficial to the good team in that respect. And I have this specific setup because I want to kind of run through a couple of little examples here. The Oracle in a Vortox game cannot see a 0 on its first night of activation, unless if there is a dead evil player. You basically don't have any freedom of choice in how that operates. And so giving a wrong number, you kind of have to then later give a correct number. But the thing is, the Oracle is going to be reading into who just died, And so the people that just died, when the number of the Oracle gets changes, the Oracle goes, yes, that guy is evil, and I'm going to stop listening to them ever. You're like, oh, okay. Whoops, I gave you the wrong number. There is actually no dead evil players, or there's more or less, or whatever. Like that kind of thing can kind of be a problem. And so if, let's say, the Oracle player is negatively impacted, you could do something later so that the Savant maybe gets more, relevant information and stuff like that. I wanted to more specifically talk about the Savant, so the Oracle is perhaps not the best example, but the Savant was my most recent mess up. I accidentally gave true information. When I'm thinking about giving Savant information, I'm just like kind of looking at the grimoire and making observations, and going, what is an observation I can deliver to the Savant player? Like, for example, here we have a pair of minions together. I could say there is a pair of minions together. Well, wait a minute, I can't say that because there's a Vortox. Every single thing that I must say has to be false. So I have to make observations of things that are not in the game and deliver those things to the Savant. That's kind of how it should be working in that scenario with a Vortox, where you just make a series of observations that are not the case and deliver it that way. But sometimes you'll miss something, you'll forget something. We're only human, we mess up all the time. People that have been storytelling daily for millions of years, still make mistakes and will mess stuff up and forget something. This human, right? The idea of the storyteller is not necessarily to run a perfectly delivered, balanced, specialist, expert game, right? The goal of the storyteller is to deliver a balanced and fun game. I say balanced first and then fun second because it's kind of a requirement. If the game is deeply unbalanced, then usually the people on the shorter end of the stick have a bad time. And part of ensuring that there's going to be fun is to give all the players equal agency, equal opportunity to engage with the game. And there's certain characters that will, like, their intention is to upset this balance, stuff like the Atheist. But then again, with the storyteller, you're supposed to be running stuff with the intention of your players having fun. And that means, here's the secret, you as a storyteller could actually just always break the rules of the game. You can do whatever the fuck you want, really. It's one of the 4 core rules is say anything you like. Look, liberally, like, with the goal of ensuring that there is a good game. So if something happens where you've accidentally given the Oracle information they're not supposed to have, and they're tunneling on something ridiculous, then you should be outside of what is actually supposed to be received, doing something to balance the game. But you should be announcing that as well, but not like so specifically, like, I gave the Savant better information, everyone, because this thing happened. No, it's, I've made a mistake, I have made steps to correct that. And then that might be doing something like giving a Savant better information, being more gracious with the Serenovus activating. One of the things that I miss all of the time is the Witch Curse activating, because I'm monitoring the flow of the conversation. Person nominates, I'm like, great, this person's nominated. Tell us why you've done this. Am I running through the nomination? And then, oh wait, I've just remembered you're dead. Now, if you've remembered that they're dead after the vote's taken place, that changes things. And also the person dying to the Witch Curse is 60-40 more likely to be trusted as a good player than as an evil player. So it's kind of important that the timing is good. Like, and people are going to read into the timing of everything that you do, how well you are able to remember all this stuff, because mistakes that you make tell the player something. Going back later and retroactively fixing things isn't always super easy. With the Witch one, you can be like, okay, actually, sorry, I missed this a minute ago when this person nominated, they have died. Ideally, you don't make it all the way up to the night phase. In the best case scenario. and then it's like, look, yeah, sorry, I missed this. You died to the witch, and like that's really easily correctable. Some really harder stuff, and I think with just getting information wrong, it's easy to do that, but it is sometimes harder to solve for that problem because people are very specific about mechanical things, and people are very specific about information as well, because there's like 4 scenarios where something could happen, right? My information is true and correct. I am poisoned. I am the drunk. That person was lying to me, which means there's a 75% chance that your information is useless. And when the storyteller makes a mistake and gives poor or incorrect information accidentally, the odds towards it being useless and the player, tunneling into something that isn't helpful increases, right? I know mathematically 75% is incorrect, but they're kind of the 4 options, because literally whenever, especially in Troll Bring, whenever somebody gives, here's my information, they go, oh, you're the drunk, oh, you were poisoned, oh, whatever, right? It's like always a counter argument that exists. I played a game before where a player heard the widow's call, and I go, here's my information, we should act on it. And people go, yeah, but we heard a widow's call. You're a really powerful townsfolk, you're probably poisoned. I'm like, okay. Do you want to help me corroborate on that? Do you want to do anything? You just want to ignore it completely then with no information, no evidence? Sounds great. And so it's really easy for players to dismiss stuff. And so if you've given information that makes it easier for players to dismiss stuff, it hurts a lot. And so sometimes giving overwhelmingly obvious savant information, like, is a good example. A lot of binary stuff, like the artist and the oracle, we don't really have a lot of choice in what the result is. Just, you kind of have to. There is stuff that you can do. For example, if the artist asked a question and they said, is seat 9 the demon? And you said yes, but they were convinced, that they were drozened in some way, and they didn't act on it, even though that was incorrect information, like incorrect information. You can actually backpedal later. Oftentimes, I'll correct informational mistakes by just private messaging the player. When playing online, it's a bit easier. In person, sometimes you can pull them aside and be like, hey, look, I made a mistake. When you asked me this question, the answer was actually this. I didn't realize until just now, which is a bit silly to say, because it's like you didn't know who the demon was. You're the storyteller, aren't you supposed to know? But it's a bit less like, I just realized now that I had made a mistake. I misunderstood. I misspoke or whatever. It happens. People are not great at communicating on the general, and you as a storyteller are kind of required to be good at communicating to people so that they can then secondhand communicate those things to other people to convince them to kill other people. So kind of you're the first step. And so you trying to be more precise and correcting stuff is important. But again, part of it is trying to do it in a way and a time when people can't read into the mistake that you've made. Obviously, if you did something like showed the dreamer to townsfolk, and they're like, that's not right, they're going to go, hang on. Like, immediately, they're going to go, hang on, I don't think this is correct. Or you've woken up a non-minion player and pointed at the demon, they're going to go, this is not supposed to happen. Stuff that I've done, it can happen, and sometimes it's waking up the evil team while the puppet girl is in play. Like, whoops. Sometimes it means a re-rack. Sometimes you can kind of, play around it. Sometimes you can move things around. If you have a floating drunk, you can sometimes move them around to solve problems like that. But most of the time, it's either like a re-rack or, hey, this thing didn't quite work, I want to change things. You could act in that exact scenario where you have a poppy girl and you have an evil team and you've accidentally just, habitually gone, click, wake, these are the minions, these are the demons. Oops, there was a poppy girl in play, I was not supposed to do that, rather than being like, hey, can you please forget who those people were, which they obviously can't do. Then you go, well, how I'm going to fix this is I'm going to change the character of the poppy grower. And so you go to the puppet girl and go, hey, you are actually this character. I made a mistake. There you go. Yeah, no shit, I wonder what that mistake was. But it's not detrimental to the game state. Like the puppet girl player goes, I know the puppet girl is not in play, which is information for the good team that the evil team already knows. And you obviously can't send the puppet girl as a bluff or anything like that. So people claiming the puppet girl player who is now the savant or whatever, is going to know is bullshit. So it's a little bit of an unfair edge that they have. But also they are going to have a whole new character and a whole new other different stuff, and they're going to kind of know a little bit more about the game. Does this fundamentally break and make the game unbalanced? Not necessarily. It's a kind of a minor thing. I don't think it's something worth re-racking over. But it's something that you have to be mindful of what your mistake communicates to that player. It's not always just information. Sometimes it's other stuff as well. Sometimes it's the game state has changed and you've not adjusted for that. Like a character has moved, or something has changed. Someone has been poisoned. There's been a few times where someone is nominated while being witch cursed, and the player who's the witch is like private message me, like, "Are you going to kill this man?" I'm like, yeah, just I don't want to like interrupt them immediately, because they'll be like, "Hey everyone, this is my thoughts. I'm going to nominate this person." And I'm like, "All right," and they go, "And here's all my reasons why." I don't want them to be like, "And I'm going to nominate this person." I'm like, "You are dead. You are dead." And they're like, I forgot everything I was thinking about my accusation now. So it's kind of hard to find a nice spot to interact with these kind of things. And then, I don't know, part of it is, is grace, is helping people understand that you are in fact fallible and you are working to make things better and improve them, because that's part of the experience. A lot of things are not concrete. A lot of things, you'll miss stuff. There's a lot of easy fixes. Sometimes I'll forget to wake people up at night and do their information. Sometimes you can just do that during the day and be like, "Hey, look, I'm sorry I missed you." Or they'll come and be like, "Hey, I was supposed to wake." And you go, yes, of course. Let's just do that now quickly. I have the grimoire here. Here's what you would have received, or pick players now, or whatever. Usually if it's at the very beginning of the day, it's when they come and get you. It's normally fine. And that player doesn't lose out too much, and if you just make that day run a little bit longer to compensate for that, then they don't really lose out anything in the grand scheme of things. Now, how I've seen this solved by some people in the past is they'll ask everyone back to their seats and put them all back to sleep to have one person activate for their one little thing and then wake everybody up again. I think this is also fine. It's just not necessarily how I would do it, because the effort required to get everyone back into the seats and stop what you're doing, interrupt everything, kind of like slow the flow of the game for a second. For like in the scenario where I messed up before was the fortune teller didn't get that because they're right at the bottom of the night sheet. Fortune teller to pick two people, learn a thing, and then go back to talking is kind of not worth it. It would have to be like really important, or specifically require me communicating something to another player. Like the Serenovus is a good example. If I didn't activate the Serenovus, which is at the top of the night sheet, and I just missed it, then I have to communicate to the other person that they in fact have been chosen by a Serenovus and they are mad at this character before they go and talk to everyone. So I think that is a scenario where I would want to go and put everyone back to sleep and wake them up again. Because it's something that does need to be communicated like that, but a lot of information on characters probably fine just to tell them during the day what it is. You're like, "Hey, look, I made a small night sheet mistake, it's not a big deal," and then kind of moving on from there. I'm trying to think of some other examples. In my very, very first game, where I ran a custom script, I had the Fangu select an outsider, and it didn't jump, and the Fangu was like, I think something has gone wrong here. And it was like way too late for me to like rewind and like and change things and stuff like that. And in a scenario, let's say the Fangu selected a player that they know, like it's the lunatic, they know that person is an outsider. They wake up in the morning and they've not jumped, and you've announced that the lunatic player has died. Now, the Fangu goes, either I'm the lunatic or you've made a mistake or whatever. In the scenario where they don't come and talk to you, they think they are the lunatic. In the scenario where they do come and talk to you, it's like, hey, just making sure everything went according to plan. You're like, balls, I have made a mistake. I'm sorry. But like, how do you rectify that in that situation? You can't go, okay, actually, everyone, sorry. What happened was, the guy that I said died didn't actually die. He's alive, and this guy died instead. People are like, why is that? And also, why did you do that right after this specific person who just died came and talked to you? Because it's less obvious who's talking to the storyteller in the online client, but in person, and they're like, yeah, the guy that you just talked to said that he should be dead instead of this other guy who is dead. It's a little bit too easy to read into that and what the problem is. And so that's going to help them solve the game rather than actually allowing you to rewind to a state. Depending on what has happened publicly versus what should have happened at night is going to be harder to rectify, and sometimes you just have to sometimes you just have to re-rank. You know, it kind of sucks. Some mistakes aren't rewindable, and a lot of this comes to mind from my time playing card games competitively. I play a lot of Magic the Gathering, and recently I've been playing Pokemon TCG. And what happens when a mistake is made? You've got you and your opponent, and you realize something has gone wrong. This happens all the time. It's perfectly normal. You call a judge over, the judge comes over, and you both explain the game state to the judge. And they go, this was what was supposed to happen, this was what has happened, this is where and how everything is. And then the judge will make steps to attempt to move the game state to a fair and agreeable place, to usually before the mistake has happened. For example, if a player drew too many cards, they go, well, do you know what the extra card was? And they're like, yeah, it's like the rightmost card in my hand. They're like, well, we're going to put that back, we're going to shuffle the deck, or something like that. Make an attempt to return the game to a state where things were not broken. And Clocktower is a little bit different from that, where once you've understood that you've made a mistake, the players learn something about the state of the game that wasn't and the state of the game that was, and where it diverged. And then figuring out the reason for why that happened is a thing that they're going to read into, and that's the thing that you're trying to avoid. Ideally, never making mistakes. But sometimes instead, by trying to solve problems more secretly, trying to solve problems more behind the curtain, I guess. Anyway, that's this. I know it's a bit jumbly, it's a bit rambly. This is a hard topic to cover. It's difficult to kind of own up to a mistake. Generally, it's hard to just go, well, I fucked this one up. I'm sorry, everyone. I know there's 13 of you looking at me awkwardly, expecting a fun game, and I delivered not a game. And I think making mistakes is always going to happen. You got to kind of get used to being like, whoops. But then learning how well you can solve something, how, what is going to happen if I solve it this way, is stuff that you should be thinking about, because everything that you do as a storyteller is information for the players. They're going to think about it too much. That's going to happen. Some things are really easy and it's not going to make a big difference. Some things are really big and you have to kind of be aware of that's what's happening. And that's kind of, maybe one of the secret skills to becoming a better storyteller. Understanding what's gone wrong and then trying to solve it in a way that doesn't further impact the game negatively. Sometimes it's going to be breaking the rules. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's got to be a little bit cheeky. And then that's kind of how it goes. Look, if you are a budding storyteller, you should check out some of the other Blood on the Clocktower stuff we have on the channel. Not only do we have just like a lot of playthroughs, but like some of them are me playing, some of them are me storytelling, but we also have just like a whole Clocktower setup advice series where we're talking about putting stuff in the bag. I think there's a whole bunch of videos about giving advice in certain scenarios, doing specific character information for some of the harder characters like the Savant, and stuff like that. A lot of tools to help kind of get you started in making more balanced games while you're running. But on the Clocktower, I'm going to have that whole playlist up on the screen, and you can check that out there. I will also just have like another random video. Maybe it's a cool game in particular you played, but I also do a lot of other stuff on the channel that's maybe worth checking out as well. And as always, the subscribe button. But on the Clocktower is kind of the mainstay of content on the channel, and so if you're enjoying that, you should stick around and see a lot more of it. Or maybe you're just excited to see some of the other board game related content that we do here. And so, like I said, you should be sticking around. And hopefully we'll see you next time, where I'm going to be evil and I'm bluffing as the gossip. We'll see.